She rushed to the hospital with her son in her arms, unconscious, but when the doctor looked at him, he was shocked and said, "My God, this boy is my son." What he didn't know yet was that this discovery would change everyone's lives forever. Rain hammered the streets of New York City with an intensity that seemed intent on washing away the entire borough. It was one of those November nights when the cold cuts straight to the bone and the sky appears ready to collapse onto the earth. In the emergency room of Manhattan Memorial Hospital, the activity was typical for a rainy Friday evening. Flu cases, a few car accidents, nothing out of the ordinary. Dr. Ethan Carter was finishing his shift when he heard the commotion. Hurried footsteps echoed down the corridor, accompanied by a desperate female voice. He looked up from the charts he was reviewing and saw a woman burst through the automatic doors with a limp child in her arms. The scene hit him like a punch. The woman, drenched from the rain, had a face twisted in pure panic. Her chestnut hair stuck to her wet face, and her clothes dripped onto the clean hospital floor. But what really caught Ethan's attention was the boy in her arms, pale as chalk, lips tinged blue, his little body hanging limply like a rag doll. "Please, somebody help me. My son, he can't breathe right." The woman's voice was a hoarse scream, loaded with absolute terror. Ethan didn't think twice. His years of experience as a pediatrician made him act on autopilot. He rushed toward her, extending his arms. "Give him to me. Come with me, quick." The woman followed him, stumbling, still gripping her son tightly, as if afraid someone might tear him away from her. Ethan guided her to one of the emergency rooms, where the team was already mobilizing. "Gurney, oxygen, get Nurse Sarah in here now." Ethan fired off orders, while finally getting the mother to place the boy on the gurney. Only then could he observe the child more closely. A boy of approximately 4 years old, dark hair disheveled, skin extremely pale. He was conscious, but his eyes looked glassy, and he moaned softly while his little body trembled. "What happened?" Ethan asked the mother as he began the initial examination, checking pulse, temperature, reflexes. I don't know," the woman sobbed, her hands shaking. "He was playing normally, then complained about his stomach hurting. Then he started throwing up and he passed out. Doctor, please, my son, he's all I have." Ethan kept his voice calm, professional, even though he felt the urgency of the situation. "Does he have any illnesses? Allergies? Did he take any medication today?" "No, nothing. He's never had anything. He's a healthy kid." While asking questions, Ethan opened the boy's shirt to listen to his heart. That's when his world stopped. There, on the left side of the child's ribcage, just below his heart, was a birthmark. It wasn't a common mark. It had a peculiar shape, almost like a small crescent moon with a darker shade that stood out against the boy's pale skin. Ethan felt the air leave his lungs. His hands froze for a second. That mark was identical to his, exactly identical, in the same position, with the same shape, the same size. Impossible. He blinked several times, as if he might be having a hallucination brought on by exhaustion from the shift. But no, it was there, real, undeniable. Doctor, is he going to be okay?" The mother's voice brought him back to reality. Ethan forced himself to continue the examination, but his hands trembled slightly. He checked the boy's pupils, breathing, ordered urgent blood work. His mind was working on 2 levels: the professional doctor doing his job and the shocked man trying to process what he had just seen. "We're going to admit him for observation and run some tests. We need to find out what's causing these symptoms." His voice came out hoarser than normal. Nurse Sarah entered the room with the support team. Ethan gave the necessary instructions, requesting complete blood count, liver function tests, abdominal ultrasound. While the team worked, he stepped back slightly, watching the mother and son. The woman held the boy's hand like a lifeline, whispering words of comfort. She must have been in her mid-30s, delicate face marked with worry, brown eyes reddened from crying. "What's his name?" Ethan asked, trying to sound casual. Lucas Bennett." The mother looked at him with pleading eyes. "And I'm Rachel Bennett. Nice to meet you, Rachel. I'm Dr. Ethan Carter. You can rest assured we're going to take good care of Lucas." But Ethan was far from calm. As he accompanied the transfer of the boy to the observation room, his mind wouldn't stop spinning. That birthmark couldn't be a coincidence. It was too specific, too unique. 5 years ago, when he was only 22 years old and struggling to pay for his final semesters of medical school, Ethan had done something he'd never told anyone. Young, broke, without family support after the rupture with his father, he'd seen an ad in the newspaper. Sperm bank paid well for donations. At the time, it seemed like the perfect solution. Quick, anonymous, no complications. He made donations for almost a year, enough to pay overdue tuition and buy the books he needed. After that, he graduated, moved on, and never thought about it again, or at least tried not to think about it. But now, looking at that boy on the gurney, the birthmark burning in his memory, Ethan felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. "This can't be," he whispered to himself, so low that no one heard. In the following hours, Ethan followed Lucas's case with a dedication that went beyond professional. The test results began arriving, and they were concerning. The boy showed signs of a severe infection, possibly viral, that was attacking his system. His temperature fluctuated, and there were signs of liver compromise. Ethan reviewed each test meticulously. He was sitting in his office. It was already past 3 in the morning, and he couldn't go home. Rachel had finally fallen asleep in a chair next to Lucas's bed, exhausted from crying and worrying. He opened the chart again, this time paying attention to details he hadn't noticed before. Lucas Bennett, 4.5 years old. Mother, Rachel Bennett, 34 years old. Father, not listed. Ethan felt a tightness in his chest. He did the mental calculations. 5 years ago. It was exactly the right time frame. He shook his head, trying to push the thoughts away. It was a coincidence. It had to be. But that birthmark. He stood up and walked to the office window. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets wet and reflecting the city lights. Ethan lifted his shirt and looked at his own side, at the mark he'd carried since birth. His mother used to say it was special, that birthmarks were signs from past lives. "Mum," Ethan murmured, feeling her absence like an open wound. She had died 2 years ago, shortly after the final break with his father. It was the darkest period of his life. A knock on the door pulled him from his thoughts. "Dr. Carter?" It was Sarah. "Sorry to bother you, but Lucas's temperature is up again, 103 degrees. Ethan immediately composed himself and followed the nurse to the room. Rachel was awake, holding her son's hand, while tears silently streamed down her face. "Is he getting worse?" she asked with a trembling voice. "We're going to control the fever," Ethan responded, already asking Sarah to prepare medication. He approached the boy, who was moaning softly, clearly uncomfortable. While applying cool compresses, Ethan found himself talking to Lucas, even though he knew the boy was barely conscious. "Hang in there, champ. We're going to take care of you." Rachel watched him with an expression that mixed gratitude and desperation. "Doctor, I don't have anyone. It's just him and me. If something happens—" "Nothing's going to happen," Ethan interrupted with firmness, but gentleness. "We're going to figure out what this is and treat it." He sat on the edge of the bed, something he normally didn't do. There was a breach of protocol there, a closeness he couldn't explain. "Tell me a bit about you two. Does Lucas have a father? Anyone in the family we should notify?" Rachel swallowed hard and shook her head. "No, it's just the two of us. It's always been that way." Ethan noticed she didn't elaborate, and something in her tone made him not press. But curiosity consumed him. How had this woman become a single mother? Why didn't Lucas have a father listed? The following days were an emotional roller coaster. Lucas showed temporary improvements followed by setbacks. Ethan requested every possible test, consulted specialists, but the exact origin of the infection remained a mystery. What became clear was that the condition was serious and needed constant attention. Ethan found himself visiting Lucas's room several times a day, far beyond what his medical duties would require. He told himself it was just professional diligence, but deep down he knew there was something more. Rachel was always there. She didn't leave the hospital, slept in the uncomfortable chair next to her son, refused to go home even when the nurses insisted she needed rest. "You need to take care of yourself too," Ethan said during one of these visits, finding her with deep, dark circles and a face pale from exhaustion. "You won't help Lucas if you get sick." "I can't leave him alone," she responded, stubborn. "He's been through so much already. I promised I'd never abandon him." There was a pain in those words that went beyond the current situation. Ethan pulled up a chair and sat beside her. "Can I ask you something? You don't have to answer if you don't want to." Rachel looked at him, guarded, but nodded slightly. "Lucas's father, he never existed, not in the traditional way." Rachel took a deep breath, as if preparing herself to tell a story she rarely shared. "I did artificial insemination. I always wanted to be a mum, but I never found someone I wanted to have a child with. At 30, I decided I wasn't going to wait anymore for Prince Charming. So I went to a clinic and chose an anonymous donor. Ethan felt his heart race. Every word from her was like a confirmation of what he already suspected, but still couldn't believe. And it was successful on the first try? He hated asking these questions under false pretenses, but he needed to know. Yes, I was lucky. Rachel smiled for the first time, a small but genuine smile as she looked at her sleeping son. Lucas is the best gift I've ever received. I don't regret anything. Ethan felt a whirlwind of emotions. There was the confirmation, or at least strong evidence. Rachel had used artificial insemination at exactly the right time through a clinic that probably used the bank where he donated, and Lucas had that mark. He's a special kid, Ethan said, surprising himself with the emotion in his own voice. You've done an amazing job raising him. Thank you, Rachel murmured. He's my whole world. At that moment, Lucas stirred in the bed, moaning softly. Ethan immediately stood up to examine him. The fever persisted, even with medication. I'm going to order new blood work, Ethan said, making notes in the chart. We need to be more aggressive with treatment. It was during these new tests that the situation took an unexpected turn. Ethan was reviewing the results when the hospital hematologist, Dr. Martinez, entered his office with a worried expression. Ethan, I need to talk to you about patient Lucas Bennett. What happened? Did you find something in the tests? I found something unusual. His blood type. It's AB negative with a rare antigen called Duffy null. It's extremely rare. Less than 0.2% of the population has it. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. He knew his blood type. He donated blood a few times during college, and it was always an event because his type was incredibly rare. And why is that a problem now? He asked, though he already knew the answer. Because his condition may require a transfusion. The infection is causing severe anemia. If we need blood, it's going to be difficult to find a compatible match. I already checked with the hospital blood bank. We don't have any units with that specific type. Ethan took a deep breath. What about the mother? Did you test her? Yes. She's O positive. Incompatible. Heavy silence filled the room. Ethan knew what he had to do, but the implication of it was enormous. Test me, he said finally. Martinez frowned. What? Test my blood. I have AB negative with Duffy null. I might be compatible. Ethan, that's quite a coincidence. It's a rare type, but it exists. Test me. If I can help a child under my care, I'm going to do it. Martinez agreed, still a bit confused by his insistence. An hour later, the results confirmed. Ethan was perfectly compatible with Lucas. When Rachel learned that the doctor caring for her son was going to donate blood to him, she broke down in tears. I don't know how to thank you, she said, holding Ethan's hands. You don't have to do this. Of course I do, Ethan responded, feeling the warmth of her hands in his. Lucas needs it and I can help. It's that simple. But it wasn't simple. Nothing about this was simple. When Ethan was lying on the gurney, donating his blood, he stared at the ceiling and thought about life's ironies. 5 years ago, he had donated sperm anonymously, thinking he would never know the fate of that donation. Now he was donating blood to what could very well be the child generated from that distant act. After the transfusion, Lucas began showing signs of improvement. His temperature stabilized, blood counts improved, and for the first time in days he opened his eyes with clarity and recognized his mother. Mom! The weak little voice came out, but it was the most beautiful voice Rachel had heard in days. My love, you're awake. She covered her son's face with gentle kisses. Ethan watched from the doorway, an involuntary smile on his face. There was something deeply gratifying about seeing that scene. Mother and son reunited, the child recovering. But there was also a strange feeling, a pang in his chest that he couldn't identify. When Lucas finally noticed Ethan, his big dark eyes fixed on him with curiosity. Who are you? The boy asked with characteristic childhood frankness. Ethan approached the bed. I'm Dr. Ethan. I'm taking care of you. Did you make my pain go away? Me and a lot of people are helping you get better. Lucas processed that for a moment, then extended his little hand. Thank you, Dr. Ethan. Ethan took that small, warm hand and felt something break inside him. It was as if all the barriers he had built over the years were cracking. You're welcome, champ. In the following days, Lucas's recovery was consistent. He still needed to stay admitted for observation, but he was much better. And with the improvement came the vibrant personality of a 4-year-old. Ethan found himself spending more time than necessary in the room. He invented excuses, checking vital signs again, reviewing the chart, asking about symptoms. But the truth was, he liked being there. Lucas was a charming child, talkative, curious, full of questions about everything. He wanted to know how the stethoscope worked, why doctors wore white coats, if Ethan had ever seen a real dinosaur. Rachel watched the interactions with a mix of gratitude and something more, something she didn't want to name. There was a gentleness in the way Ethan treated Lucas, an infinite patience with the incessant questions, a way of smiling when the boy said something funny. "He's gotten really attached to you," Rachel commented in one of these moments, after Lucas had finally fallen asleep following Ethan spending 20 minutes explaining how X-rays worked. "He's a special kid," Ethan responded, putting away the stethoscope. "Smart, curious. You're doing an incredible job with him." "It's hard sometimes," Rachel confessed, her guard down for the first time. "Being a single mom, he asks about his dad, about why he doesn't have grandparents, why it's just the two of us. And what do you tell him? The truth, that families come in all formats, that we have each other, and that's what matters. But I see it in his eyes. He misses having a father figure, someone to play catch with, play superheroes, those things." Ethan felt a tightness in his chest. "Have you ever thought about meeting someone, forming a more traditional family?" Rachel laughed, but it was a laugh without humor. "Honestly, no. I've had a few relationships over these years, but they never worked out. Lucas and I have a routine, a life. Adding someone to that would be complicated, and honestly, I never met anyone worth complicating things for." There was an untold story there, Ethan perceived. Old wounds, perhaps. But it wasn't his place to question. "Well, you two seem to manage just fine on your own," he said, sincere. "We manage," Rachel agreed. "But it's exhausting. I work from home as a graphic designer, which gives me flexibility, but it also means I never completely disconnect. It's work, it's mom, it's dad, it's everything. Sometimes I just wish to share the weight with someone, you know?" Ethan knew. He had also spent his whole life alone, by his own choice. After the break with his father and his mother's death, he had decided it was easier that way. No ties, no disappointments. But looking at Rachel and Lucas, for the first time in a long time, he questioned whether that had really been the right choice. Lucas was discharged a week later. Ethan signed the papers with a strange feeling of loss. It was absurd. He barely knew these people, but the idea of not seeing them anymore bothered him more than it should. Any different symptom, you call me directly, okay?" he told Rachel, handing her his personal card. "Thank you, Dr. Ethan, for everything. Not just the medical part, but for caring. It made a difference." When it was time to leave, Lucas ran and hugged Ethan's legs tightly. "Are you going to visit us, Dr. Ethan?" Ethan crouched down to be at the boy's height. "That's not exactly how it works, champ, but we'll see each other at follow-up appointments, okay?" "Okay." Lucas didn't seem convinced. They left, and Ethan stood there in the hallway feeling a strange emptiness. Sarah passed by him and gave a knowing smile. "You got attached." "Did not." "Did too. And I'm not just talking about the boy." Ethan glared at the nurse, but she just laughed and kept walking. In the following days, Ethan tried to return to his normal routine. He saw other patients, did his shifts, returned to his empty apartment in Brooklyn. But he found himself thinking about Lucas, how the recovery was going, if he was eating well, if the fever had returned. And he thought about Rachel, too, about the way she looked at her son with so much love, about her strength in raising a child alone, about the tired but genuine smile. 2 weeks after the discharge, Ethan did something that was completely outside his professional protocol. He looked up Rachel's address in the hospital records. He drove there on a Saturday afternoon, telling himself it was just a courtesy visit to check if Lucas was doing well. It was a lie, and he knew it. The apartment was in a middle-class neighborhood of Queens, a simple but well-maintained building. Ethan went up to the 3rd floor and rang the doorbell, his heart beating faster than it should. Rachel opened the door with an expression of total surprise. "Dr. Ethan? What? Is something wrong?" No. Sorry for showing up like this without warning. I was in the area and thought I'd stop by to see how Lucas is doing." It was a weak excuse, and they both knew it. The neighborhood wasn't anywhere near the hospital, or Ethan's home, but Rachel didn't comment. "That's very kind. Come in, please." The apartment was small but cozy. There were toys scattered around the living room, drawings stuck on the refrigerator, photos of Lucas at various ages on the walls. It was clearly a home made with love. "Dr. Ethan!" Lucas came running and jumped at him, who caught him mid-air instinctively. "Hey, champ, how are you?" "I'm great. Want to see my room? I have dinosaurs." Ethan looked at Rachel, who nodded with a smile. He found himself being dragged by the boy's little hand to a small room painted blue, full of toys, books, and yes, an impressive collection of plastic dinosaurs. Lucas spent the next 20 minutes showing each dinosaur, explaining their scientific names, with some pronunciation difficulty, and insisting that Ethan play with him. Rachel watched from the doorway, and Ethan noticed a different gleam in her eyes. It wasn't just gratitude. There was something softer, warmer. Lucas, let Dr. Ethan breathe a little. I'm sure he didn't come here just to play with dinosaurs. But that's exactly why I came, Ethan said before he could stop himself, and was surprised to realize it was true. Rachel made coffee, and the three of them sat at the small kitchen table. The conversation flowed naturally. Lucas told stories from preschool, Rachel shared funny anecdotes from daily life, and Ethan found himself laughing genuinely, something he hadn't done in a long time. "Can I ask a kind of personal question?" Rachel said when Lucas went to the bathroom. "Sure. Why did you really come here today, and don't tell me you were just in the area?" Ethan took a deep breath. Honesty. He owed her at least that. "I couldn't stop thinking about you two. I know it sounds weird. I'm the doctor. I should maintain professional distance, but there was something, a connection. I can't explain it." Rachel looked at him for a long moment. "I felt it too. I thought I was imagining things." The moment was interrupted by Lucas returning and insisting that Ethan stay for dinner, and Ethan, breaking all his own rules, accepted. Dinner was simple, lasagna that Rachel made while Lucas and Ethan put together a puzzle in the living room. But it was one of the most pleasant dinners Ethan had had in years. When it was finally time to leave, it was already past 10 p.m. Lucas was already drowsy, fighting to keep his eyes open. "Are you coming back?" the boy asked, grabbing Ethan's hand. "If your mom lets me, yes." Lucas looked at Rachel with those big, pleading eyes. She smiled. "You can come back whenever you want, Dr. Ethan." Ethan, just Ethan is fine. And so began a routine that Ethan never imagined having. He visited the apartment once or twice a week. Sometimes he brought pizza, other times Rachel cooked. He played with Lucas, helped with homework, told bedtime stories, and he talked with Rachel. Hours of conversations about everything and nothing. He discovered she was funny, intelligent, had strong opinions about politics and loved old movies. She discovered he was kinder than his serious exterior suggested, that he had a sarcastic sense of humor and was completely passionate about medicine. But Ethan carried a weight. The suspicion, less and less a suspicion and more a certainty, that Lucas was his biological son. That birthmark, the blood type, the timeline, everything fit perfectly. He knew he should tell Rachel. But how? "Hi, remember that anonymous donation you used? I think it was me." It seemed absurd, invasive, potentially disastrous. And there was another complication growing. Ethan wasn't just getting attached to Lucas, but to Rachel too. He liked the way she bit her lip when concentrating on work, how she laughed throwing her head back, how she was firm but loving with Lucas. He was falling in love, and it terrified him. One night after putting Lucas to bed, they were sitting on the couch, each with a glass of wine. Rachel had just finished a big project and was celebrating. "Can I ask a question?" she said, her voice slightly thick from the wine. "Always. Why did you never get married? Never have kids? You're kind, intelligent, handsome. It doesn't make sense." Ethan took a sip of wine, choosing his words carefully. "It's a long story and not a very happy one. I have time." Then Ethan found himself telling about the rich, controlling father who wanted him to take over the family empire, about choosing medicine and being disowned, about doing odd jobs to pay for college. He omitted the part about sperm donation, saying only that he did various gigs, about the sick mother who tried to mediate, but died before she could reconcile father and son. After she died, I kind of swore to myself that I'd never have a family, that it was easier that way, without ties, without chances of disappointing or being disappointed. Rachel placed her hand on his. "That's very sad, Ethan. It's the life I chose. But you're here, with us. Doesn't that count as a tie?" Ethan looked into her eyes so close. "It counts, and it scares me." "Why?" "Because I don't want to mess it up. You two are special, and I don't know if I'm capable of being what you deserve." Rachel moved closer. "What if we decide what we deserve?" They were so close now that Ethan could feel her breath. His heart beat erratically. He leaned in. She did the same. And, "Mommy, I had a nightmare." They pulled apart instantly. Lucas stood in the bedroom doorway, rubbing his eyes, his favorite stuffed animal hanging from his hand. Rachel stood up quickly. "Come here, sweetie. Let's go back to bed." Ethan sat there, breathing deeply, trying to calm his heart. That had been too close. too close to crossing a line he didn't know if he should cross. When Rachel returned, the atmosphere had changed. Awkwardness hung in the air. "I should go," Ethan said, already standing up. "Ethan, wait. No, you're right. It's late, and I have an early shift tomorrow." He left quickly, but not before seeing the confusion and hurt in Rachel's eyes. In the following days, Ethan pulled away. He made excuses not to visit, answered messages briefly. He was scared of what he was feeling, scared of complicating the already complex situation even more. But Rachel wasn't one to give up easily. 2 weeks after the almost kiss, she showed up at the hospital. Ethan was finishing his shift when the receptionist told him someone was waiting for him. Rachel was in the reception area without Lucas this time, with a determined expression. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. They went to the hospital cafeteria. Ethan ordered coffee for both, buying time. "You're avoiding me," Rachel began, "and I need to know why. If it was because of that night, if I read the signals wrong, if you're not interested, that's fine. But you can't just disappear from Lucas's life like this. He misses you. He asks about you every day." Ethan felt a pang of guilt. "I never wanted to hurt Lucas. But you're hurting him. And you're hurting me too. Rachel, it's complicated." "Then uncomplicate it. Explain to me what's happening." Ethan looked at her, at those brown eyes so honest, so direct. He owed her the truth, or at least part of it. "I'm scared," he admitted. "Scared of getting too close and ruining everything. You two have a good, stable life. I'm a workaholic with commitment issues and a dysfunctional family. I don't want to be another disappointment in your lives." Rachel shook her head. "You don't understand, Ethan. You're already part of our life. Lucas adores you, and I—" She hesitated, vulnerable for the first time. "I care about you too, more than I should." "Rachel." "No, let me finish. I spent the last 4 years building a life alone, convincing myself that I didn't need anyone besides my son. But then you showed up with your kindness and your patience with Lucas, and your rare but beautiful smile, and you messed everything up. And yes, it's scary, but it's worth the risk." Ethan wanted to say so many things. He wanted to tell her about the birthmark, about the donations, about his suspicions, but the words stuck in his throat. "I need time," was all he could say. Rachel stood up, disappointment clear on her face. "Okay, but don't disappear completely, okay? At least be Lucas's friend. He doesn't deserve to lose you because of my wrong expectations." She left before Ethan could respond. In the following weeks, Ethan tried to maintain a middle ground. He visited occasionally but kept his distance from Rachel. He focused on Lucas, played with him, helped with homework, but the tension with Rachel was palpable. It was during one of these visits that something happened that changed everything. Ethan had taken Lucas to the park. It was a sunny Saturday and the boy was full of energy. They played catch, went on the swings, played tag. There was a children's baseball game happening, and Lucas was fascinated. "Ethan, do you play baseball?" "I used to when I was younger." "Can you teach me? For real, Mom tries, but she's not very good." Ethan laughed. "Sure, champ, we can practice." "And can you come to my game? The school's having a tournament next month." "I'll try." "Promise? Because all the other kids have their dads there. I want someone cheering just for me too." The words hit Ethan like a shot. Lucas had no idea of the impact of what he was saying. "I promise," Ethan said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "I'll be there." Lucas smiled so wide, so happy, that Ethan felt his heart break and rebuild at the same time. That night, after taking Lucas back, Rachel invited Ethan to stay for dinner. He accepted, but there was a different tension in the air. After Lucas went to sleep, Rachel sat next to Ethan on the couch, closer than she had been in weeks. "Thank you," she said softly, "for not abandoning him completely." "I could never abandon Lucas." "What about me?" Rachel asked, looking at him directly. "Can you abandon me?" Ethan closed his eyes. "I don't want to." "But you're scared." "Yes." Rachel took his hand. "I'm scared too, Ethan. Scared of opening up and being rejected again. Scared that Lucas will get even more attached and you'll decide it's too much. But I think some fears are worth facing." Ethan opened his eyes and found himself looking into those brown eyes that had become so familiar, so dear. "Rachel, there's something I need to tell you. Something important." "What?" But before he could speak, before he could confess his suspicions about being Lucas's biological father, before he could finally lift that weight from his chest, she kissed him. It was a soft kiss, hesitant at first, but that quickly deepened. Years of loneliness, of built walls, of fear of love, everything crumbled in that moment. When they finally separated, Both were breathless. "Sorry," Rachel said. "I know you were going to say something important, but I needed to do this before I lost my courage." Ethan pulled her back, kissing her again. "It can wait," he murmured against her lips. "This is more important right now." But even in the heat of that moment, a voice in the back of Ethan's mind screamed that he was making a mistake, that he should have told the truth first, that he was building something on a foundation of secrets. He ignored the voice. The following months were the happiest of Ethan's life. He and Rachel were officially together now, though they kept things relatively discreet because of Lucas. But the boy wasn't foolish. He noticed the looks, the secret smiles, the way Ethan and Rachel stayed close. "Are you dating?" Lucas asked one day, straight to the point. Ethan and Rachel looked at each other, not knowing how to respond. "Well," Rachel began. "Yes," Ethan said. "We are, if you're okay with that." Lucas thought for a moment, then smiled. "Okay, but only if you teach me how to hit a home run." Deal. Life had a normalcy that Ethan had never experienced. Family dinners, park weekends, movie nights with popcorn. He kept his apartment, but spent more time at Rachel's place than his own. But the secret was eating away at him. With each passing day, each moment of happiness, he felt the weight of the unspoken truth getting heavier. He tried to investigate discreetly. He went to the sperm bank where he had donated, but discovered they had changed systems several times over the years, and that old records were practically inaccessible. The clinic where Rachel had done the insemination had strict confidentiality rules. Ethan knew there was a definitive way to discover the truth, a DNA test. But doing that without Rachel's consent would be a terrible violation of trust. So he lived in uncertainty, loving that woman and that boy, but always with that shadow in the back of his mind. The school baseball tournament arrived. Ethan was there, in the makeshift bleachers, cheering for Lucas as he had promised. The boy played with enthusiasm, more than skill, but was clearly having fun. When Lucas hit the ball and made it to first base, more by luck than technique, he ran straight to Ethan, jumping into his arms. "Did you see? Did you see? I got a hit." "I saw. You were amazing, champ." Rachel watched them with tears in her eyes. Later, she confessed to Ethan, "Thank you for giving him this. A man who cares, who's present. It's everything I always wanted for Lucas." "You don't have to thank me," Ethan said, kissing her forehead. "I love that kid." "I know, and he loves you too. Yesterday he asked me if you could be his dad." Ethan felt like he'd been punched. "What did you say?" "I said these things take time, that relationships need solid foundations before big decisions, but I wouldn't say no, Ethan, if you were ready to take that step. It was the perfect chance. He should tell everything at that moment. Should say that he might already be Lucas's biological father, that they needed to do the tests, that there was so much more to this story." But he looked at Rachel's hopeful face, at Lucas sleeping in the car's back seat, and the words died in his throat. "Let's take it slow," was all he said. The decision to do the DNA test came in a moment of weakness. Ethan was alone at home, reviewing medical files. He took a DNA sample from Lucas, a hair that had stuck to his shirt after a play session. It wasn't ethical, it wasn't legal, but he needed to know. He sent the samples to a private lab, using a fake name. The week-long wait for results was torture. When the envelope arrived, Ethan held it for a long time before opening it. His hands were shaking. He read the results once, twice, 3 times, probability of paternity, 99.99%. Lucas was his son. Biologically, unquestionably, his son. Ethan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. All that connection he had felt from the first moment, that instinct to protect and love, made sense now. It wasn't imagination. It wasn't coincidence. It was biology. It was blood. It was DNA. He had a son. But the realization came accompanied by panic. How to tell Rachel? Would she think he had approached them knowing this from the beginning? Would she think everything was a manipulation? And legally, what did this mean? He had donated anonymously. He had no rights over Lucas, no duties. The document he signed at the time made that clear. But he loved that boy, and he loved Rachel. And now he had confirmation that Lucas was his biological son. Ethan stored the test results in a locked drawer and tried to continue living normally. But it was impossible. He looked at Lucas and saw parts of himself, not just the birthmark, but the way the boy furrowed his brow when thinking, certain gestures, expressions. How had he not noticed before? One night, after weeks of internal torment, Ethan finally gathered courage. "Rachel, we need to talk about something serious." They were alone. Lucas was already asleep. Rachel immediately tensed. Are you breaking up with me? Her voice was small, vulnerable. No, it's not that, but it's complicated. Then tell me. Ethan took a deep breath. There was no going back now. Remember when you told me about using artificial insemination to have Lucas? Yes. And remember I told you I did odd jobs to pay for college? Ethan, where are you going with this? One of those jobs was donating sperm to a bank for almost a year. About 5 years ago, Rachel went pale. She processed the information, and Ethan saw the exact moment she made the connection. No, she whispered. It can't be. The birthmark, the blood type, the timeline. I had my suspicions from the beginning, but I didn't want to believe it, so I did a test. You did what? Rachel's voice rose several octaves. I know it was wrong, invasive, but I needed to know. And Rachel, the result came back positive. Lucas is my son biologically. Absolute silence. Rachel looked at him as if seeing a stranger. Let me understand, she said finally, her voice dangerously calm. You suspected this since the hospital, since that first night. I saw the birthmark and even so you approached us, without saying anything. You did tests without my permission. How dare you? Rachel, please, let me explain. Explain what? That you violated our privacy? That you built a relationship with me based on lies? My God, Ethan, what was all this for? Do you want to take Lucas from me? Is that it? No. Ethan stood up, desperate. Never. I love you both. I would never take Lucas from you. You're his mother, the only one he knows and needs. But you're the biological father. Rachel was crying now, tears of rage and betrayal flowing. You have rights. I don't have any. I donated anonymously. I signed documents waiving any rights. Legally, I'm nothing to Lucas. But biologically you are. And you knew this all along and didn't tell me. I didn't know, not for sure. I only had suspicions and you decided to investigate behind my back. You tested my son without permission. That's a violation, Ethan, a complete violation of trust. I know I messed up, but I love you, and I love Lucas. And yes, I did everything wrong, but my feelings are real. Rachel shook her head, hugging herself. I need you to leave. Rachel, leave. Now. I can't look at you right now. Ethan tried to approach, but she backed away. Please, Rachel, don't do this. Let's talk, work this out. There's nothing to work out. You lied. You invaded our privacy. How can I trust you after this? Because I love you, and I know you love me too. Love without trust is nothing, Rachel shouted, and you destroyed all the trust I had in you. Ethan felt tears burn his eyes. Please, leave, Ethan, and don't come back. He left the apartment like a zombie. In the hallway, he leaned against the wall and finally let the tears fall. He had ruined everything, lost everything, and the worst part, he deserved it. The following days were hell. Ethan called, sent messages, but Rachel blocked his number. He tried to go to the apartment, but she didn't open the door. He tried to intercept her at Lucas's school, but she threatened to call the police. Ethan was devastated. His work began to suffer. He made small mistakes, lost concentration. Colleagues noticed, but he didn't talk about what had happened. 2 weeks after the breakup, he received a letter from a lawyer. His heart froze upon opening it, but it wasn't what he feared. Rachel wasn't suing him or asking for a restraining order. The letter was brief. My client, Rachel Bennett, would like to inform you that she will not pursue any legal action related to recent events, provided that you respect her request to maintain distance from her family. She would also like you to know that Lucas has been asking about you and is suffering from your absence. She permits supervised visits if you agree to the terms attached. Ethan read the terms with tears in his eyes. Bi-weekly visits in public places with Rachel present. No discussion about biological paternity with Lucas. No contact outside of established times. It was better than nothing. He signed immediately. The first meeting was at the park on a Sunday afternoon. Ethan arrived early, nervous like he'd never been in his life. When he saw Lucas running toward him, he had to hold himself together to not break down right there. Ethan, you came back. I thought you'd gone away forever. He hugged the boy tightly, smelling the familiar scent of children's shampoo and grass. Sorry, champ, I had to take care of some things. Did you fight with Mom? Ethan looked at Rachel, who was at a safe distance, arms crossed, face a mask of neutrality. Adults sometimes disagree about things, Ethan said carefully, but that doesn't mean I stopped caring about you. Are you still going to teach me baseball? Of course. That's exactly why we're here. They spent an hour in the park. Lucas talked non-stop about school, about friends, about a new movie he wanted to see. Ethan listened to everything, absorbing every detail, every laugh. Rachel watched from afar, and Ethan could feel her gaze. When Lucas went to play on the swings, Ethan approached her. "Thank you," he said, "for letting me see him." "It's not for you," Rachel responded, her voice hard. "It's for him. He was suffering. I know, and I know you have every right to hate me." "I don't hate you, Ethan." She finally looked at him and he saw the raw pain in her eyes. "I just can't trust you. And without trust, I know." Uncomfortable silence hung between them. "Did you tell him?" Ethan asked. About me being... No, and I'm not going to tell him. He's too young to understand and it would be too confusing. Besides, you donated anonymously. You're not his father legally. I'm his only mother and he doesn't have a father. That's simpler. The words hurt, but Ethan nodded. "Whatever you want. It's what I want. Because I am his mother, the only one." "I never questioned that, Rachel. But you questioned my trust, my privacy, my autonomy over my own son, and I'll live with that regret for the rest of my life." The meetings continued bi-weekly, always at the park, always with Rachel present. Little by little, Ethan learned to be content with that. He watched Lucas grow, heard his stories, advised him when possible. But the distance from Rachel was a wound that wouldn't heal. He still loved her. He saw in her eyes that maybe, deep down, she still felt something too. But broken trust was an insurmountable barrier. Months passed. Lucas turned 5. Ethan sent a gift through Rachel, a science kit that the boy loved. He knew this because Lucas told him excitedly at the next meeting. "It was the best present. Mom said it was your idea." It was something small, but it meant that Rachel had at least mentioned him positively to Lucas. It was on one of those Sunday afternoons, after 6 months of visits, that something changed. Ethan had brought a new baseball and was teaching Lucas how to catch pop flies. The boy laughed every time the ball hit his glove awkwardly. "You're good with him," a voice said behind Ethan. He turned. Rachel was there, closer than she normally stayed. "He's a special kid. He misses you. On the days you're not here." Rachel hesitated. "And it's not just him." Ethan's heart raced. "Rachel, no, let me talk." She took a deep breath. "I was too hard on you. Yes, you messed up. You messed up badly. But I also messed up. In not seeing that you were scared, confused, trying to deal with an impossible situation. That doesn't justify..." "No, it doesn't justify, but it explains. And in these months, I've had a lot of time to think about what really matters, about what I want for Lucas and for me." Ethan barely dared to breathe. "I can't imagine our life without you in it," Rachel continued, tears shining in her eyes. "And I'm not just talking about bi-weekly visits at the park. I'm talking about family dinners, waking up next to you, building a life together." "You mean that I want to give you a second chance? If you still want it, if you promise never to lie to me again, never to hide important things." Ethan pulled her into a tight hug, not caring that they were in public, that Lucas might see. "I promise. Total transparency. Complete honesty. I love you so much, Rachel, and I love our boy." "Our boy," she repeated, smiling through tears. "I like how that sounds." Lucas came running. "You're back together? You're back for real?" Ethan and Rachel looked at each other and laughed. "Yes, champ, we're back for real. So, can I call Ethan Dad now?" Ethan and Rachel froze. They looked at each other, a silent conversation passing between them. "If you want," Rachel said finally. "But remember, we talked about this, about how families come in different forms." "I know, but I want to. He's always here, he cares about me, he plays baseball with me. Isn't that what dads do?" Ethan knelt to Lucas's height. "Being a dad isn't just about biology, Lucas. It's about being present, caring, loving you unconditionally. And I do all that. So yes, if you want to call me Dad, I'd be very honored." Lucas smiled that big, bright smile and jumped into Ethan's arms. "Dad!" It was the most beautiful word Ethan had ever heard. That night, after putting Lucas to bed, Ethan read a story like in the old days. He and Rachel talked seriously. Ethan told everything, every detail he had omitted before, about the sperm donations, about the exact moment in the hospital when he saw the birthmark, about the weeks of doubt and fear, about the decision to do the test without permission. "I should have told you from the beginning," he said, "but I was scared. Scared you'd kick me out. Scared of losing the chance to know you both, scared this would change everything." "It changed everything anyway," Rachel pointed out. But I understand. It must have been terrifying. I'm sorry for everything. I'm sorry too, for pushing you away, for not giving you a chance to explain properly at the time. They talked about the future, about when and how to tell Lucas about the true nature of Ethan's paternity. They decided to wait until he was older, maybe 8 or 9, when he could understand better. And legally, Rachel asked, do you want to pursue your rights as biological father? No, Ethan said without hesitation. I donated anonymously. I'm not going to use biology to take any rights away from you over Lucas. If you allow me to adopt him formally in the future, that would be wonderful. But only if and when you feel comfortable with that. What if I tell you I already feel comfortable? Ethan looked at her surprised. Really? Ethan, you're already his father in all the ways that matter. Why not make it official? Tears filled Ethan's eyes. I would love that. 6 months later, Ethan and Rachel got married in a small, intimate ceremony. Lucas was the ring bearer, proud in his little suit. More important than the ceremony were the adoption papers that Ethan signed 3 months after the wedding. Now not only biologically but also legally, Lucas was his son. The night after the adoption was finalized, the 3 of them sat on the couch, the same couch where everything had almost ended, where Ethan had almost lost everything. I have something to show you, Rachel told Lucas, who was now 6 years old. She took an envelope from her pocket. You know how we talked about how you came into the world? About how Mommy used a special clinic? Lucas nodded, curious. Well, it turns out that the donor who helped Mommy have you was Ethan. Lucas frowned, processing. So, Dad Ethan is my real dad. He's always been your real dad, Rachel said. But yes, he's also your biological father. You have the same blood as him. Is that why we have the same mark on our side? Ethan and Rachel looked at each other, surprised. Lucas had noticed. Exactly, Ethan said. That's why. Lucas thought for a long moment. Then he smiled. Cool. So I'm not different from the other kids at school. I have a mom and a dad. You've always been special, Lucas, but yes, you have a mom and a dad who love you very much. I love you guys too. They hugged, the 3 of them together, a family built in unconventional ways, through impossible coincidences and second chances, but a real family nonetheless. That night, after Lucas fell asleep, Ethan and Rachel stayed on the apartment balcony, looking at the city lights. Have you ever thought about how crazy all this is? Rachel said. Out of billions of donations, billions of possibilities, somehow I chose yours. And years later, of all the hospitals, all the doctors, it was you who treated Lucas that night. Destiny, Ethan said. Do you believe in that? In destiny? I didn't. But now, how can I not believe? All the pieces fit together in an impossible way. Rachel rested her head on his shoulder. I used to think families needed to follow a script. Meet someone, date, marry, have kids, in that order. But we did everything backward and it worked out just the same. It worked out more than fine. It worked out perfect. Not everything was perfect. We went through a lot. But it made us stronger, made me a better man. You and Lucas, you healed me in ways I didn't even know I needed. You healed us too, Rachel said. I didn't know I missed having a partner until I had you, and Lucas, he flourished with you around. They stayed there in comfortable silence for a while. Ethan? Thank you. For that night at the hospital, 5 years ago. For being the doctor on call. For seeing the birthmark. For being curious and scared and imperfect and human. Because all of that led us here. No, Ethan said, kissing her forehead. Thank you. For running to the hospital with Lucas that night. For being strong and vulnerable and giving me second chances. For teaching me what a real family is. They hugged, there in the quiet apartment balcony, with their newborn daughter sleeping inside, knowing that at home a son waited for them, eager to be a big brother. Wait, I need to add the ending with the daughter Eleanor, like in the other versions. 3 years later, Ethan and Rachel were at another hospital, but this time he wasn't the doctor. He was the anxious father in the waiting room. Lucas, now 9 years old, sat beside him, swinging his legs nervously. How much longer, Dad? I don't know, buddy. Having a baby takes as long as it takes. I still think it should be a boy. Girls are annoying. Ethan laughed. Just wait until you meet your sister. You're going to love her. Are you sure? Absolutely. A nurse came out of the delivery room. Mr. Carter, you can come in now. Ethan stood up, his heart beating fast. Stay here, champ. I'll be right back. He entered the room and saw Rachel, tired but radiant, holding a small pink bundle in her arms. Hi, she said, smiling. Want to meet your daughter? Ethan approached reverently. The baby was tiny, perfect, with tufts of dark hair and closed eyes. "She's beautiful," he whispered. "Want to hold her?" Carefully, Ethan took the baby in his arms. She was so light, so fragile, so perfect. "Hi, little one. I'm your daddy." The baby yawned, and Ethan felt his heart melt completely. "Can I bring Lucas in?" he asked Rachel. "Of course." Moments later, Lucas entered the room shyly. When he saw his sister, his eyes widened. "She's so tiny." "You were this small once too," Rachel said. "Want to hold her?" Lucas sat carefully in the chair, and Ethan placed the baby in his arms, supervising closely. "Hi, little sis," Lucas said softly. "I'm your big brother. I'll always protect you." Ethan and Rachel looked at each other, tears in their eyes. Their family was complete. "What are we going to name her?" Lucas asked. "How about Emma?" Rachel suggested. It was Ethan's grandmother's name. Ethan felt a lump in his throat. His mother would have loved to meet her grandchildren. "Emma is perfect." That night, after Lucas went home with Rachel's parents, because yes, Ethan had even reconciled with Rachel's family over the years, Ethan stayed at the hospital with Rachel and Emma. While the baby slept in the bassinet next to the bed, Ethan held Rachel's hand. "You know I never imagined this, right? A family, kids, plural. And now? Now I can't imagine my life any other way. You, Lucas, Emma, you're everything. We love you too. So much. You know what's funny? I spent so much time afraid of being like my father, distant, focused on work, incapable of love, and in the end I'm nothing like him. Not at all. You're present. You're caring. You choose to be here every day, because you're worth every second." Emma started to fuss, and Rachel picked her up to nurse. Ethan watched the scene, his wife, his daughter, and marveled at how life could surprise. 5 years ago, he was a lonely man who believed it was better that way. Now, he was a husband, father of 2, and completely in love with the life he'd built. "What are you thinking about?" Rachel asked, noticing his contemplative expression. "About how I almost threw it all away. That night you kicked me out. I thought I'd lost everything. But you fought. You accepted your mistakes. You gave space when I needed it, and you showed me day after day that I could trust you again. Because I couldn't give up. You were too important. And now look at us. Family of 4. Family of 4, Ethan repeated, smiling. "Sounds perfect." Emma fell asleep in her mother's arms, content. Rachel put her back in the bassinet, and she and Ethan stayed there, watching the little one breathe. "Ethan, Thank you. For that night at the hospital 5 years ago, for being the doctor on duty, for seeing the birthmark, for being curious and scared and imperfect and human, because all of that led us here." "No," Ethan said, kissing her forehead. "Thank you. For running to the hospital with Lucas that night, for being strong and vulnerable and giving me second chances, for teaching me what a real family is." They hugged, there in the quiet hospital room, with their newborn daughter sleeping beside them, knowing that at home a son waited eagerly to be a big brother. It was a family built from impossible coincidences, anonymous donations and identical birthmarks, second chances and forgiveness. It wasn't a family that followed the traditional script, but it was theirs. It was real, it was love, and in the end, that was all that mattered. If you enjoyed this story of love, overcoming obstacles and second chances, don't forget to leave your rating from 0 to 10. Comment what you thought of Ethan, Rachel, and Lucas's journey. Your opinion is very important to keep bringing stories that touch the heart. Thank you, and see you in the next story.